So,
the piece is missing. They're on a different table.
no, it's all right. Just try not to touch the table. So, I brought my mikveh stuff to go to mikveh after shiur, and I haven't had a cup of coffee. So I don't know. Without mikveh and without coffee, we'll see how this goes. I mean, I don't know this. No. I'll make a cup of coffee afterwards. No. I'll make coffee after. I'll have coffee after. We're so late here, and I have to stop on time because I have to go to mikveh. So there you go. See, you lose on both ends. And hitting it. Okay. We started this new Maamer yesterday morning. Margela Defuma Derava. What does Rebbe say? The ultimate expression of Chochmah is Tshuva and Maisim Tevim, and we brought two psukim. We brought one pasuk that shows that. Reishi is Chochmah Yiras Hashem. Beginning of Chochmah is Yiras Hashem, Tshuva. The Seichel Tov L'chol Hoseyim, and a good Seichel to all those who do it, that means Maisim Tevim. And it's clear, it doesn't say, Chazal say in the Gemara in Brachos, it doesn't say a Seichel Tov L'chol Loimdeim. Seichel is intellect. That's what you learn. That's not what you do. But the pasuk says Hoseyim, and that teaches us Maisim Tevim, good deeds, as opposed to good ideas. Okay, now I'm going to go through the first paragraph quickly because what we want to see is the as we talked about yesterday, the Maamer in the Maamer, where the Rebbe talks about the union of Simcha. He gives three reasons why our Avodah today has to be b'Simcha. But there's an amazing Maamer surrounding that parenthetical statement in the middle. So we'll see how much of that we can do. I hope we can do a lot of it. Move on, third line. Shetachlis chochma hi tshuva. Umizeh shenemar seichel tov l'chol hoseyim move on shetachlis chochma u'maisim tevim. Okay. Fifth line. Inyan zeh. Nemar befeirush b'kasuv. This is said explicitly in a pasuk, in a verse. It says seichel tov l'chol hoseyim. Right? It's a good seichel to all the ones who do them, whatever that means. Oiseihem daika, specifically the ones who do them. Right? V'loyoid, not only is it explicit in the written Torah, ela sha'achar kach, afterwards, nisparish b'Torah Sheba'al Peh. Torah Sheba'al Peh explains it. The Gemara in Brachos says l'loim deim loinem. Or points out that it should say l'loim deim, the ones who learn it. It's a good idea for the ones who learn it. But it doesn't say that. Lo nemar, ela lo yisem, to the ones who do it, do them. V'hainush is a b'diuk, it's exact. V'yadua Maamer kveid kedushas marichami admar nasi doreinu b'zeh. It's well known, the Maamer of the previous Rebbe, most of the Maamer of our Rebbe are based on Maamer of the previous Rebbe. Most, not all. Far from all, but most. Maamer of his Rebbe. Mishabas Parshas v'yishlach. The Frierdiker Rebbe said this in Shabbos Parshas V'yishlach, Taf Reish Pei Tes, 96 years ago. The Sefer Maim Kontreisim in that Sefer called Kontreisim, which we talked about when we were learning Basi Lagani. Shesham Maschil, the beginning of that Maamer, Mi Maamer Rizal Zeh, it begins with this Maamer, Margela Defuma Derava. Umeisif Tzion Mekarer B'Brachas Tav Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. The Rebbe says something interesting. The previous Rebbe mentions that the source of this Gemara is the Gemara in Brachos on page 17a, Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, which is very rare. And Chassidus will say, Chazal say, doesn't say where. There might be footnotes at the bottom that help us, but in the Maamer it won't say. Whereas the previous Rebbe actually says that this is from a Gemara in Brachos, and the Rebbe says something, just a remez about this. V'yesh lemar remez b'zeh, perhaps the hint that the previous Rebbe is hinting at by virtue of saying this. Ki Yud Zayin, the letters Yud Zayin of Gematria Tov. Tov is Gematria 17, the word Tov, good. In other words, this Gemara is found on the good page in Brachos. They're all good, but this is especially good. Ubezeh Gufa, and on this page itself, but Tov Gufa, in the good itself, Inyan Zeh Kasher Imamad Aleph, it's with the first page of it, Hascholas in the beginning of it, when it's still strong and fresh. Unbelievably rare to see something like that in a Maamer, what the previous Rebbe did and what the Rebbe just did about it. But okay. Maybe I'll say the previous Rebbe brings regarding this verse and this statement, well, the statement of Rava. What does Chochmah mean? It says the purpose of Chochmah, of wisdom, is as follows. So what's Chochmah? Chochmah, he says, he Torah. is learning Torah. Ve'inyan tachlis chochma tshuva ma'asim tovim. And what does this verse mean? That the ultimate purpose of chochma is tshuva and ma'asim tovim. Now you would think that means, this is what we said yesterday, you think that means the ultimate purpose of learning is to come to a state of tshuva and ma'asim tovim. But Rashi doesn't explain it that way. The Rebbe is going to show us right now. Rashi explains it in a completely different way, and it's very interesting. Completely different. So the Friedrich Rebbe says, "Ve'inyan tachlis chochma tshuva ma'asim tovim hu keperish Rashi." It's like Rashi on the pasuk in Tehillim. What does Rashi say? She'ikara shel Torah, the ikar of Torah, she'eh ima tshuva ma'asim tovim. That there should be with it tshuva and ma'asim tovim. In other words, what comes first? The tshuva and ma'asim tovim, and then the Torah. Simple pshat in the pasuk is the ultimate purpose of Torah is to come to tshuva and ma'asim tovim. First you learn Torah and then you do tshuva. That makes sense, right? But Rashi doesn't explain it that way. Rashi says the ikar of learning, you learn properly once you've done tshuva. That's when you express the ikar, the essence of what learning is, with tshuva, meaning tshuva is already there, and then you're learning. So that's what the Rebbe is going to ask about.
What is Ma'asim tovim?
Good deeds. Ma'asim is deeds, tovim is good. Right? Umedayik b'zeh. He says very clearly, the previous Rebbe, the l'chura ain't a muvan. This doesn't seem understood. Shari Torah, what's Torah about? Ikara hi yadiyah v'asog b'seichel. Is understanding, is knowledge and comprehension in seichel. Shehu inyan chochma, that's what chochma is. Intellect. So learning Torah is an intellectual pursuit. Obviously you have to believe in God, okay, but I mean, Rabbi's going to ask, what's it got to do with tshuva? Someone who didn't do tshuva can't understand what he's learning? Why not? If he's smart, he'll figure it out. And yet, this Maamer Margela seems to say, no. Well, what's that about? That's this. The Rebbe asks the question here, goes into the union of Simcha, and then answers the question. If we can speak fast enough and show up on time, that's me, right? Then we can see, well, hopefully we'll see both parts. L'zois, mitzvahs limud Torah, the mitzvah of learning Torah, he shaloimed Torah ba'ofen, is to learn Torah in a way, shemavina, that he understands it, betam, with reason, v'sfara sichlis, and an intellectual logic. Umay inyan chochma v'avana v'asoga, and what's the connection of wisdom, understanding, and comprehension? L'tshuva ma'asim tovim. Now that doesn't mean it doesn't bring to tshuva. Of course it'll bring to tshuva, but what's the connection? Why do you need tshuva in order to understand? You don't need tshuva to understand. Now the Rebbe is going to ask the question more powerfully based on simple people who might not understand, but their tshuva is very real. In other words, the Rebbe is going to disconnect intellectual understanding from tshuva. There's two different things. They might play into each other, but they're two separate states of reality. Right? There can be someone who's extremely bright and sits down in front of a Gemara and understands it very, very deeply, even though he hasn't really thought very deeply about his relationship with God. Right? That's not possible. Well, evidently, according to this pasuk in Tehillim, on some level it's possible, but only on a very, very external level. No, it's not really possible. What does that mean? Why? Why say such a thing? What's the connection between intellect and tshuva? Again, intellect can bring to tshuva. I understand, so therefore I change. Okay, I get that. But why do they have to be together? Tshuva is not necessarily dependent on intellect. Right? It's also true. Right? The smartest people do the best tshuva? No, usually not. As a matter of fact, sometimes the single greatest barrier stopping someone from doing a serious tshuva is his intellect. He just thinks himself into boxes all the time. Right? So the Rebbe is now going to bring an example that's more relevant to life 100 years ago, but you can still see it a little bit if, closer to the old yeshiva We've sort of moved out of the loop. But the old yeshiva used to be right in the middle of all the Jewish, the religious action of Yerushalayim. And if you walked straight out, you'd walk past all the little tiny shuls full of the Sfardim who work around the shuk. And there would be an Iraqi shul and a Tunisian shul and a Moroccan shul, and they'd all have 9 people, and they'd all be looking for the 10th for a minyan. And chas v'shalom, they'd go together and make one minyan, because this is Moroccan, this is Tunisian, and this is Iraqi, and there's no way they're going to daven together. And you'd open behind the curtain and see there would be 6, 7, 8 guys sitting there saying Tehillim beautifully. Their clothes are soiled because they're working, and they're working with their hands, and it's a tough day. Davening mincha, right? Holy Jews. Intellectuals? Probably not. Right? Holy? Ooh, wow. Put all the intellectuals to shame, these guys. And that's what the Rebbe's about to say. She'inin tshuva. Yeshna etzel kama noshim pshutim. Tshuva you can see by some simple people. She'enim bala yediyah vaskola. That aren't people of great knowledge and great intellect. I mean, they might be very smart, but they're not intellectuals, and they don't know a lot. Why? Well, they weren't really educated so much. But they're aroused very, very powerfully to do tshuva. Now, this is the line that completely changes the Maamer. Third line in the second paragraph. Ubeichin, they cry, b'mar nafsham, with the bitterness of their soul. As we see, go to the shuls of the in the old days. If you read those books that you have to read, the making of Chassidim, branches of the Chassidic menorah, you'll get the Lubavitcher Rebbe's memoirs. These are all books connected to the previous Rebbe. If you read those books, you'll get an idea of what life used to be like. And one of the things you'll learn about is that every trade had their own minyan. The blacksmiths had a minyan, and the tailors had a minyan. What would they do in those? They did show the minyan would be early in the morning. They had to get to work early in the morning, so they'd be there saying Tehillim an hour before. In learn Chassidus. This is in the old days when Chassidus were just showing up. They'd sit and say Tehillim for an hour, crying. That's what the Rebbe's describing, right? But Mar Navsham, great intellectuals, they could read, which their non-Jewish counterparts couldn't, right? The same guy in the Polish community down the block or the Russian community couldn't read, the tailor down the block, but this guy could read. Why? He's a Yid, he knew how to read, he could daven. But learn? How much did he ever learn in his life? His father was a tailor, and when he was 10 years old, 12 years old, he went to apprentice with his father, right? Mass education, that's brand new, right? The Jews have been around for how long? Right, Matan Torah was 3,300 and where are we holding? We're in Pei, so 3,337 years ago, right? So since then, how long has there ever been mass education? So I assume in the desert there was mass education because they had nothing else to do, right? Though they did things, right? They traded and they bought and they sold. I mean, you think they had a life there. They lived there for 40 years. People would most Jews would grow up in a house where the father had a certain trade, and the son would go into that trade, and he'd learn how to do that when he was 10 or 12. He'd learn a little in Cheder when he was young, and that was it. Yeah. Yeshivas for everybody. That's new, and that's why we're just figuring out how to do it. Yeah. Which is interesting. I mean, the Jewish world is still figuring out how to educate everybody. And there's still, failures here and there, and they haven't quite figured out how to deal with, this kind of kid, that kind of kid. It used to be the kids who were really, really bright. They went to yeshiva, and everybody else could learn to trade, and that was it. No, now everybody's in yeshiva. Okay, so how do you deal in yeshiva with the kid who's not necessarily the brightest, or doesn't have the sitzfleisch to sit? He's very bright, but he's got a spring in his bottom, and so he's popping out of his seat all day long. How do you deal with that? Okay, so that's what a lot of educators in the Jewish world are trying to deal with right now. That's exactly, and schools are showing up for those kids, etc., that are very, very, very successful. So the Rebbe says, like we see, but muchash is we see. Just walk down the street. The Rebbe says, This is the Frierdiker Rebbe talking, right? He's talking about Russia. Walk down the street in Russia, what are you going to find? Simple Jews saying Tehillim with tears. Their belief in God is unbelievably powerful. Their intellectual prowess? Well, such intellectual prowess. Belev nishbar, with a broken heart. Now the magical word that changes the whole Maamer. Amnam. However, Inyan Marirus Shabbatshuva. Now, we all just finished, I hope we all finished, Igeres Tshuva in Tanya, our daily Tanya. And you all notice that in Tanya, and I'm just saying this as an introduction to what we're about to see. In Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talks about two levels of Tshuva. Lower level Tshuva and upper level Tshuva. Lower level Tshuva is called Tshuva Mimarirus, from bitterness. I'm embittered by the fact that I've distanced my soul from God. Mirirut, bitterness, not depression. Completely not. Embittered. Right? The focus is still on God, not on me. Depression is all about me. And the second level is tshuva ilah, higher level tshuva, which is tshuva misimcha. Is dabchus rucha, the clinging of soul, of spirit to spirit, the fact that we're hugging and kissing a Kadosh Baruch. We're bechinas neshikim. Okay. Two levels of tshuva, lower level and higher level. Generally, the Alter Rebbe says you start with the lower level and you work up to the higher level. The Rebbe is going to explain what our generation is about and how the lower level of tshuva is not relevant to our generation. That's what the Rebbe is about. He's telling us there's a certain level in Tanya that's not relevant to us. And he's going to give us three reasons. Right? Rebbe says, Amnam, however, Inyan Marirus Shabbatshuva, the bitterness of tshuva, Eina Shayach B'Dareinu Zeh Achron, is not relevant to this last generation. In our generation, this last one. Dara de Ikvas of Mashiach, the generation on the heels of Mashiach. Why? Now the Rebbe says one line. Kaven Sheb'Dareinu, in our generation, Ein Lanu Kayach. You don't have the power. Le'inyan Marirus. What does the Rebbe mean? So that's explained now. This is a Maamer from Tavshin Memvav. This is a Maamer from 1986, 1985. So right? The calendar hadn't turned yet. It was December, not January. And okay, so what does the Rebbe mean? So it's the mashpiyim of our generation who explain this line, right? It's not, someone who lived 150 years ago who, ate lunch with the Alter Rebbe is explaining something to you. No. 150 years ago, he didn't eat lunch with the Alter Rebbe, but you say that. Right? We don't have the kayach for Marirus. So what do the mashpiyim tell us? What does it mean? It means exactly what we were talking about before. That instead of involving ourselves in the inyan of Marirus, what will we do? If we focus on the negative in our Avodas Hashem, in how certain actions we've done have taken us far from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if we focus on that, we won't do the proper, useful, successful Avodah called Marirus, which works and is good, and if you do it right, it's the thing to do. We will become depressed. I'm no good because I did something bad. Right? That'll be our issue. We won't do the Avodah the proper way. The Avodah the proper way is to focus on the fact that we've done something that distances our soul from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we're embittered by that. And we'll cry tears of tshuva. The improper will say, I'm no good. I'm no good. I'm a lowlife, and I'll just beat myself up. And the whole conversation will become about me. It has nothing to do with God. It's just all about me and my relationship with myself, which is depression. And that's the single most powerful weapon in the arsenal of the Yetzer Hara. You want to get someone not to do anything useful in life, just get them depressed and you win. Right? We've all experienced, not clinical depression, God forbid, we've all experienced down moments where we just can't get anything done. You're just like, getting out of bed is a major event. Okay, fine. So that's not where we want to be. Right? So we won't do it right. How do you do it right? So you can learn in Tanya how you do it right. What's the focus is on the soul. That I've distanced my soul from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's painful. because I'm relating to my soul as real. It's not about me. It's about my soul is me, but it's about my soul. Now, I'm the one that did that, so I'm the one that has to do tshuva. But I'll do that wrong. And if I focus on the negative, if I focus on how far from a Kadosh Baruch Hu I am, I'll become depressed and immobile. That's the first reason the Rebbe gives, which is an amazing reason. Now, you would think, why would we become depressed? Simple shot. Well, I guess we're just so wrapped up in ourselves that it will make it all about ourselves, which is what depressed people do. Right? Make it all about themselves, because depression is all about becoming completely and totally in-looking. Right? It's all about me. Those people laughing over there are laughing at me. No, they're not. They don't even know you're in the room. No, but it's about me. That's depression. Okay, depression is complete and total self-focus. What's called in Chassidus what? Yeshus. Yeshus. That's why, depression, not mariras. Depression is always looked down upon in Yiddishkeit, meaning that obviously clinical depression is a sickness. It's not something someone has control over. But the downs that a person can allow themselves to get into, well, just get out of yourself and get on with life and realize you have a purpose in life and stop thinking about yourself so much and you'll be just fine. If you spend all day worrying about, and it might be your own spiritual state. Oh, my soul, I wish I could just don't know. And their favorite word is I. Right? I, me, and my. Those are their favorite words. Remember, once I had a former student. He left the yeshiva to go to another yeshiva. There's no connection between the two. Right, but he wrote a note and he put it up. It's funny; those notes aren't around here. I guess there's nowhere to put them. There used to be a bulletin board in the dining hall. Gershon, it's over here. Used to be a bulletin board in the dining hall where guys could, write little notes. Thank you, Mayanot. I had a wonderful time. Thank you, Mayanot. I had the worst time in my life, and I can't wait to get out of here. They put them up there, right? And no one ever wrote those kind of notes. So the nice ones they wrote. So one guy wrote a note. And I have no clue whether it was positive or negative. I really don't. But what everybody noticed about the note, it was about 8 lines. He said the word I, me, or my 15 to 20 times in 8 lines. I never read anything like this. Every second word was I or me. Right? So that's a recipe for depression. Because if that's the way you look at the world, then you've got 8 million people on the other side. Because those people don't think you're the center of the world, right? There's 8 billion people who do not think that all of reality is about you. So you are in direct competition with all 8 billion of them. Whereas if you happen to be able to transcend that and realize that your reality is something bigger than you, you might share that reality of yours with hundreds of thousands of other people who also relate to the fact that their life isn't about them, it's about something bigger than them. So you can all get along. But if my life's about me and your life's about you, then we're 2 bumper cars in a Luna Park running into each other all day long. Because I know you're taking up space, but it's all about me, isn't it? Well, you don't think so. Justifiably. Right? Sometimes those guys marry women who think it's all about them. They get lucky. Or she marries a guy who thinks it's all about her. That's rarer, but okay. Usually they're just miserable. So Mariras doesn't work in our generation because we'll get a little too into ourselves and a little too down about the fact that we're not perfect in our Avodah. Even though the Avodah Mariras works, but we won't do it right. So what do we need? And this is so interesting. The Rebbe is saying this in 1985. Right now, they might, as usual, have taken this too far, right? Because it's so often the forces in the world take a good idea and turn it into idiocy by stressing it too much. But the idea is definitely the idea, and this is how we raise our children, and this is how we educate our children. What do we need? Hischazkus, strengthening, and hisoididus yiseda, and great encouragement. What do people need? They need to be encouraged to accomplish those things they can accomplish. What don't they need? To be beaten down with a stick. Whether they're doing it to someone else as an educator or they're doing it to themselves in terms of their relationship with themselves. Right? Saying negative things about ourselves just doesn't work. I don't think you would, you go across the street to Kraft Stadium or whatever, gun soccer to, work out. You're going to go run a little. And after you run, you're sitting there puffing and schwitzing and, hands on your knees, and you're trying to get back, and you stand up and you see some guy standing and he smiles. You smile back. Hi, how you doing? Oh, what's your name? My name's Jim. Oh, hi, Jim. How you doing? Where are you from? I'm from Dayton, Ohio. Oh, good. No, that's fine. What are you doing in Israel? Well, I go to college, and my Hillel had a trip, and so I came and I stayed a little longer. He says, oh, that's nice, Jim. Jim, do you keep Shabbos? I said, no. Do you put on Tefillah? No. Jim, do you know that you're about as low as a creature as you could possibly exist in the world, and that you're living in a state of absolute darkness? Do you know that? That you're a fool, a jerk, and an idiot? Do you know that, Jim? Jim, you got to get your life together. You're just pushing. You're so low, you have to look up to see down, Jim. What's wrong with you? Get your life together, you moron. What an idiot. Come on, Jim, come with me. I'll enlighten you. Now, of course, that's going to work with Jim, right? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. You ever say those words to yourself? Of course you do. We all do. They work. Of course not. Why would that work? Why, if I'm calling myself an idiot, a jerk, and a fool, do I think I'm going to get better? I'm just going to be an idiot, a jerk, and a fool. Because, why in the world would that encourage me to do anything other than being an idiot, a fool, and a jerk? So I wouldn't say it to anybody else. So why in the world do I think if I say it to myself, it's going to have any positive value whatsoever? Now, does that mean that I'm completely, irreverent and don't care when I make a mistake? No, of course not. When your child makes a mistake, what's a proper response? Pasnish. You're so much better than that. I'm surprised you did that. That's an interesting message, isn't it? Instead of saying you idiot, you're really amazing, and I'm just surprised that an amazing person would do something so stupid. You don't have to say so stupid, right? You don't have to say that. You're thinking that, but you don't have to say it to him. Right? It's a different message to give the kid. He failed. Okay. Fine. Good. Try again. What's the difference between people who make it and people who don't? Everybody fails and everybody falls. There's no such thing as life in Eilam Hazeh without failure and falling. The question is, how do you react to that? Do you pick yourself up and go weiter, or do you just sit there depressed because you're on the ground? If you do the latter, so nothing happens. If you do the formers, then you're a mensch. You'll make it. Pick yourself up and go weiter. Right?
Why does the Rebbe connect this to the generation close to Mashiach?
They're just talking about that's who our generation is. We'll see. There's going to be 3 reasons for this. The third reason will answer your question. Right? But that's how the Rebbe describes our generation all the time. But it happens to be there's 3 reasons, and the third one will be relative to that. So that's one aspect of us that will hinder our avodah mitzad merirus, the yeshus. Therefore, what do we need? Encouragement. And it's so interesting because education now is not rapping children on the knuckles with pointers, right? No one's doing that anymore. It just doesn't work. It worked 100 years ago. It did not work. It worked, I guess, right? People grew up. I think it's pretty haughty of us to think that we're healthier than the people who grew up 100 years ago. Look around at the society that they created, and look around the society that is being created by the people around now. I would think theirs is a lot healthier than the one now, right? Okay, so. And that goes for secular society, religious society, everything, right? Okay. So that worked for them. It doesn't work for us. It really doesn't work for us. Not a way to educate children. It's not a way to educate ourselves. So the Rebbe says, what do we need? Encouragement. Therefore, in our generation, the Avodah is Misech Simcha, joy. Val derech zeh b'negei lamidas Tehillim. So too regarding saying Tehillim. I apologize for my voice. Shemavur b'Maamer belev nishbar v'nidke. Right, that these Jews were saying Tehillim belev nishbar. It's a pasuk in Tehillim belev nishbar v'nidke, with a broken and downtrodden heart. David HaMelech says that's the key to tshuva. It might have been, not for you. Again, that doesn't. If that leads to irreverence, that's a problem. But if it leads to real growth, because you believe in yourself, how many negative words about you have you ever heard from the Lubavitcher Rebbe? All right. 40 gigabytes of information. When I was buying my first, I mean, now of course it sits in the drawer and it doesn't work. You know, what was the first iPod? That was the thing that had all the memory, the little thing that was this big. I think it was called an iPod, right?
For music?
Yeah, for music. Yeah, right. So I went to get an iPod. So I was in Target in New York, in Brooklyn, and I called up my son and said, there's 40 gigabytes or 80 gigabytes. And of course 40 was cheaper, and I'm Jewish, and that's the one I wanted. So he said, you have to get 80. It's my son, he's spending my money, of course. So I said, why do I need 80? Because he was going to set it up for me. He said, Abba, the Rebbe's 40. Okay, 40 gigabytes of audio. 40 gigabytes of audio. How many negative words in those 40 gigabytes? How many words telling the Jews they're bad in those 40 gigabytes? How many words telling the Jews there's nothing they can't accomplish in those 40 gigabytes? 39.9 talking about telling the Jews how amazing they are and how they have a nefesh elokis. How often does the Rebbe even talk about the nefesh bahamis? How often does the Rebbe even talk about the animal soul and the Yetzer Hara? Every now and then it comes up. That's what the Rebbe talking about all day long. Nefesh elokis. You have a godly soul. 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 Meaning the Rebbe practices what he preaches also in terms of how he educates us. It's not beating us up. It's uplifting us. How do you do a pitkam Rebbe Seinu Nesienu? It's well known. Now we're going to have to go through this quickly because this is very, very, very difficult, and it's a Maamer unto itself. It's a Maamer that at some point after Yom Tov we will learn in this class. Who's here, we'll see, but it's actually a secret. The Rebbe explains this. Al derech zebnegei lamirs tehillim shemavur b'maamer belev nishbar hayadu pitkam Rebbe Seinu Nesienu. It's well known. The statement of the Rebbeim, and this statement is the source of that reality called bitachon, trust. Trust in the Kadosh Baruch Hu that things will be okay. Shenimsa yedei kedushas Mari Chami Admar Nasi Doreinu. It was given to us by the previous Rebbe. The previous Rebbe related a story about the Tzemach Tzedek. Ukfar nidpas, and it's already printed, which means it's relevant to everybody. If it's printed, it means it's relevant to everybody. The Rebbe might say something in a Verbrengen that's relevant to the people sitting in the room in the Verbrengen. And when they write up the Verbrengen, the Rebbe will take that whole section out. He said, don't print that. That was for the people sitting in the room. All right. Okay. A teacher's allowed to do that. It's not a problem. Okay. So there'll be other things that are obviously universally relevant. Well, if they make it to print, that means that's what they are. So the fact that this story, the Friedrich Rebbe, was printed means it's shaykh to everybody because anybody can see it. And what the Friedrich Rebbe say? Trach good, v'tzayin good. Think good, it'll be good. We're going to go through this quickly and superficially. And I apologize, but it's tomorrow's our last class. So, I know. Shemachshava ba'ifin shel toiv atzma. The positive thought itself, he mevia ima esatev. It brings with it the good. The Rebbe explains at great length the bitachon, the absolute trust, not a munah. It's based on a munah, but bitachon is something beyond the munah. You can't have bitachon without a munah, but you can have a munah without bitachon. the bitachon, that HaKadosh Baruch is responsible for absolutely everything, and there's nothing beyond him, and that he wants good for you. And if you put yourself in his hands, doing those things that he also wants you to do within the context of Elam Hazeh, meaning the story the Rebbe tells is about someone who was very, very sick, the previous Rebbe. And he went to the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek said, Trachut v'tzankut. Think positively that God will take care of you, and he will. Now, of course, they went to doctors. They did what they were supposed to do, but it worked out. You don't sit at home and say, okay, God will take care of it. No, you have to do what you have to do, and the Eibishter will make sure that what you do works out. Right? And you have to understand that it's in the hands of the Eibishter, and to the extent that your bitachon, your trust is complete and total, then the Eibishter's response will be complete and total. To the extent that you have, you're hedging your bets, the Eibishter hedges bets, so to speak. Okay? But absolute, complete, and total bitachon, and don't ask any questions about it because we're not going to get into it because it's a long discussion unto itself. But that I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg. That idea, trachgut, and that trachgut is complete and total trust in the Eibishter, regardless of the situation, that things will work out, no matter how bad it might be. Now, it is interesting that as bad as it was 80 years ago in Europe, the tzaddikim who wanted to get out, got out. Those who had unbelievable bitachon. Does that mean the people who didn't get out didn't have bitachon? No. But were they able to muster the level of bitachon that the tzaddikim who did get out mustered? Probably not. Right? There's a Lubavitch today because the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe got out. There's Bubov today because the Bubov of a Rebbe got out. There's what there is because people got out. Those groups of Chassidim where the Rebbeim were killed. Alexander Chassidim. You ever heard of the Alexander Chassidim? Yeah, okay. You might have heard of them. Right? How many Alexander Chassidim were there in Poland before the war? Probably 250,000. How many are there today? There's a million in Bnei Brak. Why? The Rebbe passed away in the war. So most of us Chassidim also, right? Why is there Ger, the other huge Chassidus in Poland? The Rebbe made it up. Right? Bells made it up. Lubavitch made it out. Rav Nana says the reason he got out of 20 years in Siberia alive, and he wasn't boasting about himself, he just said he used to sleep well. He said he slept like a baby every night. Why? Because the Frierdiker Rebbe told him he's going to get there to Israel. He had absolute bitachon that he's going to get there to Israel, and he did. Made it through 20 years of Siberia. Came out on the other end alive. That was very rare. Trakut v'zangut. Hainu shemachshava teva. Atzma hi mevi masatei. Ve'ein sarich liyes klal in shel mariras. There doesn't have to be any notion of mariras. In other words, positive thought relative to your ability to accomplish what it is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to accomplish in Olam Hazeh will help you accomplish that. Now, we all know that. Any doctor will tell you the positive patient does better than the kvetchy patient. I mean, that's aleph base in medicine today, right? It's a matter of fact, the placebo effect. You don't have to give them medicine. Just have them think they're getting medicine and they'll be okay. Most, right? The difference between the actual drug and the placebo is often not that great, right? There's a difference. They take the medicine, don't take the placebo, but and interesting enough, in order for the experiment to work properly, it has to be double blind, right? Because the positive vibes, so to speak, of the doctor will affect the patient. So if the people administering the drugs know which is the real drug and which is the placebo, they'll have a more positive relationship with the patient getting the drug than the one getting the placebo. So that'll also affect the patient's recovery. So they do double blind. The doctors don't know and the patients don't know. That's when the test really works. Because if the doctor knows, then his positive energy will affect the patient positively. Because he's sure this is going to work. Because he's giving him the drug that he thinks is a good drug, as opposed to the salt pill. It's real. I mean, of course it's real because the Rebbeim say so, but it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. The Rebbe says an amazing line in the next line. We see it in Gashmis. Vein sarkles kalin shamariders. What does that mean? Amiris tehillim ubechi b'mar nafshe inasinas stokka. Now the Rebbe doesn't mean you shouldn't say tehillim or give stokka. The Rebbe means you shouldn't say tehillim and give stokka with tears. Say tehillim with the fact that you're joyful that you can praise the Eibusher. Sometimes David HaMelech is talking about things that are hard to hear. Say can even deal with that positively. Give tzedakah. Why? Kaifer nefesh, because I really deserve to be killed and I'm giving tzedakah instead. No, give tzedakah in order to help other people. Positive. Giving tzedakah. Ki machshava teva atzma tavi ima tev. The positive thought will bring with it good. Vet zayin good. It will be good. Right? Trach good, which is think good. Vet zayin good. Vet is future tense. It will be zayin good. Umikeven sheishna, look, this is the chassid of the Rebbe. Umikeven sheishna havtachas Rabbi Seinu Nisienu, and since there's the promise of the Rebbeim that this is the way it works, the kasher machshava hi b'ofen shel tov, that when the thought is good, good things happen. Hari barer adavar shekeni. It's absolutely clear that that's the way it'll be. If the Rebbeim say it, then that's the way it is. That's the Rebbe, the chassid. So that's the first reason. The first reason the Rebbe gives us is we don't have the energy, we don't have the power to do the Aveda Mariris properly. We'll get depressed. That's the single most powerful thing in the arsenal of the Yetzer Hara, right? I mean, the Yetzer Hara, you get depressed. So what's the first thing? What's probably I'm not picky, I'm not saying it because of this year, I'm saying it in general. The most important thing to do in your day, get up in the morning and learn Chassidus, right? Starts the day off right, you're thinking about things in a real way. It's so important. Get up in the morning, learn Chassidus first. If you're feeling a little down, what's the first thing your Yetzer Hara is going to make you miss? Right? He's no dummy. I'll get up late. Okay. Then, the rest of the day, I always feel bad. Guys who see me in the hall feel bad. You're like, hello, good morning. I just feel the need to apologize. No need to apologize. Ubefrat, shemuva, al zeh sipur at Tzemach Tzedek. There's the story of the Tzemach Tzedek. Someone came to the Tzemach Tzedek who was having, I think it was a family member, was having medical issues. And the Tzemach Tzedek said to them, Trach good, v'tzayin good, meaning do what you have to do, but be positive, everything will work out. Shekein haya b'pfeil. That actually is what happened. It all worked out. Sha'amar Tzemach Tzedek le'echad chasidim. The Tzemach Tzedek said to one of the chasidim, Trach good, v'tzayin good, think good, it'll be good. V'chein haya. And it was. Harazainian shal Maisarav. This is a story of the Rebbeim. Ubefrat, particularly. Sheshama Madubar Hu Babrius Aguf, the Gashmis. That story is talking about physical health of the body, which is obviously important, but less important than spiritual health. Shemizem Muvan Mikoshkin V'Kal V'Chaimer, and this is understood all the more so. Legave Brius Baruchnius. Spiritual health. Umikeven, and since She'inyan Zen Nisparsem, it was publicized Al Yedei Nasi Doreinu by the previous Rebbe. The leader of our generation is how the Rebbe refers to the previous Rebbe. Ba'ad Shekvar Nitfas, until it's actually printed. Muvan, it's understood. She'yesh B'zeh Hara, there's an instruction. L'kol Echad Va'achas Misrael, every single Jew. Zem move on, and from this is understood. And the first reason, now the Rebbe is going to bring the second reason. We'll see how much we'll try to get most of the second reason. The Neisef Lamavur, in addition to that which is explained, Bigeres Tshuva. We just finished reading it in third part of Tanya. The Masha Kosov, that which it says, David HaMelech says, V'chatosi negdi tamid. My sin is in front of me always. Okay, so now that can be understood as I'm always aware of my failings. That I keep my sin in front of me at all times. There are people who explain it that way. How does Chassidus explain it? In a completely different way. Ein mechuvan liyos tamid. It is not the intention of this verse of David HaMelech to be always otsev nivze chas v'shalom, to be downtrodden constantly, chas v'shalom. Heaven forfend. Elo negdi daika. What does negdi mean? Negdi is that wall is negdi. That wall is opposite me. It doesn't say lifanai, that my chet should be in front of me, lifanai. It says negdi. What's negdi? Far away, over there. Opposite side of the room. Oh, keep your sins at arm's length. Do you know they're there? Yes, you know you're there. Are you wallowing in it? Don't wallow in it. Fix it. You did something wrong. What's the proper response? Do something right. Right? We've talked about this before, I'm sure, but okay. Right? A friend of mine who's Mashpia in Sfat, so the first time he had ever seen GPS, so this goes back a while, he didn't have it in his car, but he was in a cab in Sfat. Now, why a cab in Sfat would need GPS? I don't know. There's nowhere to go. But this cab had GPS and Garmin, and he was looking at it, watching it, interested, because they was talking to the driver, telling him, turn right, turn left, turn right, turn left. He'd never seen this before. So he was sitting in the back seat watching what was going on the screen. And all of a sudden, they got to a hill, and the driver had said, turn right, and the guy made a mistake. He turned left. So he said, oh, now I'm interested to see what's going to happen. He turned left. So, of course, the machine's going to say, you idiot! You fool! I told you to turn right, and you turned left. Moron! Blockhead! Bulach! What are you doing? No. What did it say? Recalculating. Right? And you know they said recalculating. That was before it said rerouting, recalculating. Right? And so what do you have to do? You have to take a left, and a left, and a left, and then a new right. Right? Oh, okay. So you had a mitzvah. You had a mitzvah to turn right. You turned left. Now you made a mistake. Okay, now what have you got? Mitzvah 1, turn left. Mitzvah 2, another left. Mitzvah 3, another left. And now you can do the right turn. So from the one mistake, you ended up with 4 mitzvahs. Fix it. You ever miss an exit on the highway? Everybody misses an exit on the highway, right? You were supposed to get at 16A, you got off at 16B, you got off at 16A. And it's completely different. It's a different county. It's a different country. Okay. So you get off from 16. So of course the proper response is to park the car, get out of the car, rip your shirt, get the ashes that you have in your glove compartment, and you put them on your head, and say 10 chapters of Tehillim, and then get yourself back up and clean the ashes off and drive to go to 16B. That's the proper response. You made a mistake. You're gonna sit on this. Let's do some serious tshuva here. What's the proper response? Well, when you get off the end of the exit, usually you see the entrance to the highway across from you on a rather large street. Sometimes it's a very small street. You can just drive right across if you're somewhere rural. But if you're in, you hit a town, usually that's like the only road in town. So you have to take a right and make a U-turn at the light, and then get back on the highway. Say, what's the big deal? That's what you do, right? Okay, you do something wrong in your life in the middle of the action of living life. What do? Start doing things right. Just stop. Can't worry about that right now. You are going to have to deal with that at some point. You turn off highways all the time in the wrong exit. You're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. Now's not the time to deal with this. You stop your car and call your psychologist. I just did it again. It's not the time. Get back on the highway and go get off on 16B. Right? Why are you draining a cup? You have what to do. Right? And there is a time to sit down and reflect. But even that reflection has to be positive. Right? Businesses will reflect on what didn't work in the previous year. There's no question. They'll sit down at the end of the year and they'll make a cheshbon nefesh. Okay, what worked and what didn't work? What's the whole purpose of that? That next year will be better, right? When the business sits down and says, we tried this campaign, it didn't work, so we're not going to do that again. This one worked, this one worked, this one worked. Okay, so we'll do that, but we can fix this one, we can fix this one, it'll probably work a little better. Okay, good. That's what they're talking about. What's the whole idea? Next year. They're not breaking their heart over what happened then. They're planning what's going to be better in the future. That's chassidus nefesh, cheshbon nefesh. How can I make it better from here on? What I did. Can I elevate it? I can elevate it with real tshuva. What's the real tshuva? Getting back to the Eibishter, thinking more about the Eibishter and less about myself. Right? Because that was the reason I did the Aveira. Why'd I do the Aveira? Because I'm completely and totally stuck in myself. Ruach shtus. Okay, good. So now the tshuva is going to be let's get stuck in myself even more in order to worry about where all my own failings. So that's going to work. That's the whole reason I did the Aveira in the first place. Because I'm too stuck in myself. So now I'm going to get stuck in my own religiosity so much I can't think about anything else. Well, it's all just the same. What gets us out of it? The simcha. What's the simcha? The simcha of the fact that the Eibishter, no matter where we are, is waiting with open arms for us to return to him. That's the simcha of tshuva. Doesn't matter where we are, what we did, what happened. He's waiting for us. That's the tshuva that the Rebbe is talking about. Let's read 2 more lines and we'll stop. Hainu ksiv basra, it said that the sin is far from me. Taksiv basra, what does it say afterwards? Tashmieni sasan v'simcha. Make heard for me gladness of heart and joy. So now, in Tanya, the Rebbe says as follows. And our Rebbe is going to tell us that even this rega katan is not necessary because we won't do it right. In Tanya, what does it say? Shetekef achrei rega katan de meriras, that immediately after one small moment of bitterness, leiv nishbar v'nidke, the broken and downtrodden heart, tzarich liyeh shleimus asasin v'simcha. There has to be complete joy. Ad, to such an extent, David, Noam Zmiris Yisrael, David, the one who wrote the songs for the Jewish people, Eimer al zeh tashmeni sasan v'simcha. That right after the Leiv Nishbar V'nitka, David HaMelech says, and you should make heard for me joy. Meaning there's a moment of brokenness and then joy afterwards, because what's the joy? That I can fix the brokenness. I realize there's brokenness, but I can fix it. Part of the fixing, if done right, is breaking my heart over the brokenness. But you and I won't do that right. We just won't do it right, as the Rebbe tells us. We'll get depressed. I'm no good. That's not what an Aveira means. An Aveira doesn't mean I'm no good. I'm just as good as I was before I did the Aveira. Right? What's my problem? I did something not good. Right? But I'm still good. And the focus of Chassidus and the inyan of tshuva that the Rebbe is talking about here is focused on that last part, not the first part. Because the Rebbe said, if I focus on the first part, I'll just sink into depression. I'll never get anything done. But if I focus on the last part, I'm still as good as I was with your own children. I know it sounds silly, but it works and it's important. Don't ever say, oh, you're such a good boy. You cleaned up your room. You're such a good boy. What message did you just tell that child?
Only good when he cleans.
He's only good when he cleans up the room. That's not true. He's always good. All right? Sometimes he does things that are better and sometimes he does things that are worse, but not, oh, you're such a good boy, you cleaned up the room. He's not a good boy because he cleaned up the room. He's a good boy because God creates good boys. What is he? He's a good room cleaner-upper, which I know sounds stupid, but that's how you should talk to him. What a good room cleaner-upper. Wow. You did an amazing job. Well done. Good job. Because if you tell him he's a good boy because he cleaned up the room, he hears that, but he also hears that if he doesn't clean up the room, which he might do next time because he's not into it, all of a sudden he's a bad boy. That's not true. He's never a bad boy. He does bad things, because we all do, but he's never a bad boy. And he'll grow up healthier if he knows that. He'll grow up less healthy if he thinks he's bad sometimes. There's an old Lubavitch poster, early, black and white. Kid looking out at the camera, leather cap, leather jacket over a white t-shirt, and you assume he's wearing jeans, and you don't assume he's the best in writing, arithmetic, and what's the other R? Reading. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's, right? He's probably not the best at that. And he looks out at the camera defiantly and says, I'm not junk. God don't make junk. If God made you, it means you're worth something and you're good. Okay, so go express it. I blew it. Okay, I blew it. So now get back on the highway and get weiter. Don't wallow in the negative, because if you wallow in the negative, there's more stuff that's going to happen that's not positive. You wallow in the negative, you're probably going to have to get yourself some ice cream to feel better. Right?
Okay.
Person who breaks his fast, his diet, and Baruch Hashem, I never have to worry about these things. But someone who's trying to diet and lose, 40 pounds. Okay, so of course he breaks his diet, he gets all depressed. Oh, I'm no good. What's the next thing he does? Goes out and gorges on the last thing in the world he needs. Oh, that was useful, wasn't it? Right? You're going to mess up with the diet. Of course you're going to mess up with the diet. When you started the diet, you really thought for the next 6 months you're going to eat exactly the right thing at the right time every single time? Of course not. You're going to fall prey to that, chocolate ice cream thing that, looks so good when you're boiling hot on a summer day and say, oh, okay, I'll start dieting again in an hour.
Dubai
Right?
chocolate.
What?
That's the new thing. Did you know about that? Dubai chocolate. New thing.
What?
It's like this chocolate bar with it's like green pistachio. It's like this crazy.
Yeah. What? And it's good chocolate?
Which one?
Good stuff, huh? My family, there used to be a saying that you rate cakes on a scale of 1 to 8, and chocolate one's 9 or 10. That's how cakes work. Okay. God created chocolate for people with a bad metabolism. It was a rough thing to create. I get it, People can eat anything they want and stay skinny, so they can eat chocolate. But they shouldn't anyway, right? I mean, there's this thing called iskafia and Chassidus that has nothing to do with your weight. It's your spiritual weight. Okay. Seder, we'll stop there. We'll pick up tomorrow. We'll see that. So we're just about to see the second reason. The Rebbe is about to tell us why even that rega katan of merirus is not necessary for our generation. The Alter Rebbe says it. The Rebbe says explicitly that it's not relevant for our generation.
Rabbi, you asked us to remind you, maybe I didn't hear it because I came in late, but about the 2 stories about why the Freak Rebbe didn't, or why the Rebbe didn't go to the Freak Rebbe's grave once in that week.
Ooh, it's late. Okay, I'll tell you very, very, very quickly because I didn't set, last night I was so tired I didn't set my alarm. So I got up at 6:45, which means I went downstairs, had a glass of orange juice and a piece of cake, got in a cab and got here, and my mikveh stuff is downstairs. I have to go to mikveh here. It's a big advantage having a mikveh here, I must say. So, and I didn't have my cup of coffee yet. But there is an amazing story that when during the trial, that again, this Maamer was said 2 days before the beginning of the trial. During the trial, so the Rebbe was going to the oil every single day. Now, the Rebbe